Hey everyone, I'm Mind, and this is set number 72153, Venusaur, Charizard, and Blastoise from the very first LEGO Pokemon wave. This set contains 6,838 pieces and will retail for $649.99 in the US when it officially releases on February 27th, 2026. This set was gifted to me early for review by the LEGO group through the LEGO Ambassador Network, but all opinions expressed in this video are entirely my own. If you missed it, I'm doing early reviews right now of every single LEGO Pokemon set. I've already got Eevee up on the channel, and then Pikachu and the gift with purchases should be coming very soon. So let me know in the comments, what do you guys think of this set, and which set do you want to see reviewed next? But now let's get into this review. So here is the Venusaur, Charizard, and Blastoise set right in front of me, and I am so excited that LEGO Pokemon exists. Right off the bat though, I do want to mention, this set is expensive. Very, very expensive, and I have a lot of thoughts about that. However, I'm going to talk about that more at the end of this video and focus right now just on the builds themselves before we start talking about pricing. However, if you want to hear my thoughts on pricing first, feel free to skip to it in the description below. There should be a timestamp. But yeah, definitely know pricing is at the top of my mind when I'm reviewing this. I just don't want to keep bringing it up throughout the entire review. That being said, yeah, of course, this set is split into three different sections. We have Venusaur in his little terrain area, Charizard in this, lava mountain, and finally Blastoise in this little ocean. The three Pokemon are on this display stand that can be taken apart. We can slide Blastoise out of place like this. We can do the same thing with Venusaur right here. And if you're not a fan of the display stands at all, you can also display the Pokemon on their own, because they come off very easily. So Blastoise comes off just like that. Charizard can be removed from the top up here. He's got a little hole at the bottom to connect him to this, bar right here. And Venusaur connects in a very similar way to Blastoise. We can just lift him up like that. All three Pokemon are built to be able to stand on their own. So if you're not a fan of the stand or you just don't have room for how tall it is, this is a display option you have. Though, of course, then you have the giant builds left over. We'll get into that more at the end of the video, though. For right now, I think it's best to probably just go through the Pokemon one by one. So we'll start with Venusaur, then do Charizard, and then do Blastoise. And then I'll give you my overall thoughts on the package and the set as a whole at the end of this video. So starting with Venusaur, he is my favorite Pokemon of these three. I'm not too much of a Gen 1er, my first games were Diamond and Pearl back in 2008, and these days Generation 7 is my favorite. But Venusaur is a Pokemon that I do quite like, so I was excited to be getting this guy, though unfortunately I do think he's the weakest of these three builds. I think that's honestly mostly because he's a difficult creature to sculpt, especially out of LEGO, and this will tie into the price conversation later on, and you'll see me talk about it with a few of the others, but I honestly think this build and all the builds in the set are too big. Let me show you what I mean by that. Because I want to start at the face, specifically the way the eyes are done. They are their own separate printed tiles, and I think the actual prints look great. The white is very vibrant, the red's really vibrant. The issue is, there's a lot of gappiness around them, so it makes it look like there's just a bunch of holes in Venusaur's head. Now, if this was a smaller build, you might have been able to have an entire molded piece right here that the eye was on top of, but because LEGO pieces only get so big, the eyes had to be separate parts here, so it makes it somewhat awkward to connect them. I do appreciate that Venusaur is actually in scale with the other two Pokemon. Venusaur is the biggest of the three in universe, so he's also the biggest in the set, but in my opinion, if all three were scaled down a little bit, it honestly would have helped them. Because Venusaur especially, I don't know, he doesn't feel like he has one solid face. He looks like he's made up of a bunch of different parts. Which, I mean, I guess it is a LEGO set, that's correct. But, the forehead seems like one section, the eyes are one section, the nose is one section. It doesn't all combine together in the way that it should. There's too many gaps in here. The little nose at the front is printed, which I like. I also love the way the ears are done, the way they're, actually three-dimensional and they go back on his head. That looks really cool. The big puffy cheeks are done really well. There's a lot of exposed studs, which might seem a little bit off-putting at first, but Venusaur is a frog. He's got, all these little bumps and warts on him. So honestly, the LEGO studs are kind of a good way to represent that. You can even see that on the legs back here. There's some tiles as well to be more of that. But yeah, the studs feel like an intentional part of the design on this guy. Back to what I was saying with the front of the face, I think the front of the face is the worst, but you can see it all throughout the build. Frogs have such a unique shape to their body, and because there's not big enough pieces to represent the exact shapes they need, they have to combine a lot of smaller pieces. And on some parts that works, I think the cheeks look good enough, but on other parts it feels a bit awkward. I will say I do really like the shape of the bottom jaw. I think that fits in with the cheek well. He's got the pink tongue here, which is very iconic, and a few little teeth. There's a little bit of movement here, but not a ton. He can't, properly close his mouth. And you do have to be careful with this, because if you try to, pick him up by his mouth, it's very easy for it to fall apart. Specifically, these pieces right here snap off super easy, so then you have to take the entire mouth off to reattach them. Not a huge deal if you're just planning on displaying the set, but if you're planning on moving it around at all, yeah, something to be aware of. Overall, though, I think the face is really close to what it should be. I just wish there wasn't the gappiness around the eyes, because I think the eyes are one of the most important parts about building a creature, and when that's a little bit off like this, it does affect the rest of the build. Anyway, moving to the front legs, there's no motion on them, but there is actually articulation on the feet, and I'm actually surprised how much movement there is here. They do a really good job of attaching that with a ball joint where it's mostly hidden away, so there's no, super obvious gap or anything, But yeah, fairly solid range of motion for like how big and heavy Venusaur is. And it can spin like a full 360 as well if you wanted to. The shaping on the feet is really good. I especially love the way the claws are done. A few awkward colors in here. We have light bluish gray for kind of no reason at all. I assume that was either a budget limitation thing or like an ease of building thing. But yeah, there's no reason that should be gray. That should be the same blue that's everywhere else. And honestly, that's a few different places in this build. You can see some gray on the back of this foot, a little bit of yellow right there. Helper parts on the insides of builds is common, but it does feel like a lot here. Moving to the hind legs, we can take a look at the rest of Venusaur's body here. And honestly, from the side, I think this is one of the better sculpted parts of the build. It cascades down and thins out a little bit. The back legs actually do attach on a ball joint, and there's a surprising range of motion here. You can spin them like a full 360. That combined with the foot motion in the front makes this guy surprisingly posable for how heavy he is. He's not really going to be able to maintain any poses without extra support because he is so heavy. But the fact that that motion's there at all is very impressive. Anyway, we've got like a bend to this leg, some of these tiles to be warts. Again, though, talking about some awkward parts of this build, we've just got, like, exposed Technic here, because this gap's not fully covered up. And again, in a set this big and this premium, I would have liked to see that covered, because not only is it obvious Technic, it's also the wrong color. We've got black right here, we've got gray in there, we've got brown in there. And even on the foot, we have teal, which, like, kind of fits Venusaur, but that's still not his color. There's even a little bit of gray and teal back here. I just wish all of that was covered up a bit more. Venusaur's backside is round and smooth. And of course the other hind leg is exactly the same. Venusaur's back is mostly covered up by this big leaf, however you can move it up to see the rest of it. And again, smooth and blue. Funnily enough, this can actually hinge open and there's just like support bricks inside. It's just the way they chose to build it, but I like the idea of turning this into like a vehicle for one of your minifigures, because there is absolutely room for that in there. But now let's move on to the actual plant on Venusaur's back. And again, I think this is pretty good. These leaves look fine. I like these green rubber pieces in the center. That's a very cool touch. And the tiles on top of the plate are effective enough at creating the shape they want. But again, I can't help but feel if they'd done this a little bit smaller, they probably could have done this shape easier if they could have just used like a molded leaf piece. Obviously, with a build this big, there is no molded leaf piece that reaches this size. So if they'd just done everything smaller, this would have looked better and it would have been more friendly to the consumer because more people could have bought it. So that is still my biggest takeaway of this set, is it just could have been smaller. But for the scale they did it, I think it looks good enough. And of course, all four leaves are the same. Then in the center, there's of course like the brown bulb that the flowers are erupting from. And the actual flower is pretty good, I do like this. There's two different shades of pink to create the pattern on the flower. Little bits of yellow at the top. This looks pretty much exactly how Venusaur's flower should, and there's a bit of motion on it. You can move the petals up, and you can also angle them like this or like this. But having them slightly curved is what's intended and what looks best. Something else I like about this build that actually all the Pokemon models do is that they're not just static, they're all actively using a different move. So Venusaur here you can see is using a Vine Whip, he's got these vines coming out from behind his back, and that's very fun. It makes it feel like he's in active motion. And of the three move effects, I honestly think this one's probably the best. If you're curious about the underside of Venusaur, there's how it looks. Obviously the colors don't match, but you're not really meant to ever see this. On a normal LEGO set I wouldn't mind this as much, but again, with how big this set is, I kinda wish these colors all fit. Especially like on the body and up here, I don't think the feet matter as much. But yeah, it would have been nice if everything was fully correctly colored. That's far from the biggest issue with this build, though. But yeah, there is a lot that I do like about this build. I think it's so cool to get a LEGO Venusaur, and the essence of Venusaur is captured here. Like I look at this guy and I do see Venusaur's personality more than just the shape. The Pokemon that I know from the video games is here. But the biggest thing is I just see things that could have been done better. We have colors that aren't supposed to be that color. We have gaps in the face. And honestly, I think a lot of these issues could have been solved if the set was smaller, which is never what you want to be saying. If something's going to cost this much, they should really justify that price. And I will say the set does in some ways, but again, I'll get into that at the end of the video. But yeah, for how big this set is, even though I love it, this build is a little underwhelming. And of course, we have Venusaur's little display stand here. It's like this poisonous forest terrain. I like the different shades of brown to be the dirt on the ground, and these plants are really cool. Using dark green leaves and magenta flowers, these plants use like a pearlescent green that I don't see too often, so that has a very fun look to it. I feel like this is properly acknowledging that Venusaur is not just a grass type, he's also a poison type, so I think it fits him really well. You can see there's 4 pads on the ground, 2 have Technic beams coming out of them and 2 do not, and that's where Venusaur is supposed to attach. You probably saw on the underside of Venusaur's feet that there was Technicals in it. Well, that's to slide onto these axles to keep him in place. So let's attach Venusaur right now. Now he is in place and on the stand, and there's how he looks actually displayed on it. I do think this complements the build really well. I also appreciate how he's like on multiple levels. Like his back feet are on ground level, but his front feet are slightly raised. That just makes the pose a little more dynamic and the build a little more fun. So I think this was done really well, even if it didn't necessarily need to be included, but I'll get into that at the end of the video. For now, I think that's about all I have to say for Venusaur, so next let's move to Charizard. So here's Charizard, and I think this one's pretty good. Blastoise is definitely my favorite build of the three, but at least in terms of sculpt, this feels like a huge step up compared to Venusaur. Now, I will say having this guy standing up like this is a little bit awkward because his head and neck are sort of bent. It's not looking as low as it typically would, and you can't, like, bend that down any further. That's because when he's on the stand, he's posed more like this, and that does look pretty natural. But yeah, even though you can't have his feet touch the ground, that's how it's going to look when they are. So it works if you want to have him, like, breathing fire into the air. You can also bend the head, like, even further back. But if you want to have him looking down at the ground, that's just not possible with the way he's built. Starting with the legs, these look perfect. They have a nice, like, little bend to them, but they keep a very cartoony feel. And I assume because they're not trying to give him warts like Venusaur has, he does not have nearly as many studs as Venusaur does, though there's still an occasional few to still make this feel like Lego. And we've got a little bit of posability here. You can bend the legs back if you want to have him flying in the air, or move it a little bit forward. It's enough to make him stand up or fly, and I think that's all it needs to be. And same thing with the posing on the feet. There's a little bit of movement there. Charizard's a symmetrical Pokemon, so the legs are of course the same on each side, but he is built in a way where you can get him in like a little bit of a walking pose, and I actually think that looks really cool. That's an awesome way to pose him. Charizard's belly is bright yellow, and he uses a lot of these big rounded pieces. But yeah, this is the scale where I feel like these shapes really work. The scale that Venusaur's at, though, even though it is accurate compared to Charizard, just feels way too big for the shapes that LEGO has. The shaping on the body extends downwards somewhat, though there's something else down here. That's how Charizard attaches to the stand, which makes sense when you have the stand there, but when you have him displayed on his own, that's a little bit awkward. And it is just anti-studs in the tail, which I would have liked to see that rounded off because everything else is, but it's not the end of the world. At least the colors are all correct there. I don't really have much else to say about Charizard's sides other than the fact that, yeah, they look good. These slope pieces are all used perfectly, nothing feels out of place. And then Charizard's back has some pretty complex stuff going on, but I have to say they handled it really well. They have to attach his wings here, and that attaches with a Technic system, but I'm happy to say they actually have all the correct colors in here. The Technic pieces are orange, they're not a different color. They use this little triangular flag piece to cover up a bit of the Technic. And there's a few small out-of-place colors here, right? We've got some black, we've got some dark gray. This little bit of light gray at the top is probably the worst offender, but again, it's not the worst thing I've seen. While I would have liked for all that to be orange, I honestly think it looks better than some of the colors on Venusaur. And then the actual vinyl wing pieces that Charizard has. This is, of course, an all-new exclusive piece for this set. And what's really cool about them is that they're different colored on each side. So on the back side of the wings, they're orange to match Charizard's back. But on the front, they've got that teal blue, and it's perfectly vibrant. Nice Technic structure here, too. Again, no awkward colors in that. I mean, yeah, there's a little bit of gray, but that's not the end of the world. That doesn't bother me nearly as much. It makes this feel very, like, Lego-ified. I appreciate that the little ball joints that they attach to, too, are actually orange as well. They try to use those wherever they could, including on the arms, which really helps the consistency that there's not those awkward colors in here. Charizard's arms here are actually posable. As you can see, it's on a mini ball joint, so you can move it up, move it down, as well as rotate them on the bar that they're attached to. There's an elbow joint built into the arm as well, and this is as straight as it can go, but you can also fold it up like this. When it's down like this, though, it does create a really nice shape for the elbow. The hand at the end attaches on a clip, so it can be moved up and down as well. And unfortunately, the bar that the clip attaches to is dark bluish gray, and I don't know why that is. If that was orange, it would be perfect. That is an out-of-place color in this set. But at the very least, the out-of-place colors are gray. They're not like blue or green. So it's not the end of the world. But yeah, ideally I would have liked to see that recolored. Charizard's neck attaches at a bend, but it is static in place, so you can't move it at all. They did a fairly good job to cover up that gap. I mean, if you're really looking at it, you can see it, but especially if you're at like a somewhat higher angle, it's not noticeable at all. The way the neck arches and like thins out, though, I think looks really good. And then Charizard's face, I would say, is pretty close to perfect. He's got two new printed eyepieces, which are as vibrant as they need to be, which I'm very happy to say. Because with printed pieces these days, you never know, but no, these are good, even though they do have the white on them, like they are printed well. I think the horns were done in a really smart way. This looks good. Nose is printed as it is with the rest of the Pokemon, and he's got like these unicorn horns for teeth. And I feel like with this little cheek coming down, they capture that like open mouth look really well. He's shooting in a flamethrower, that's his move in this set, and that's of course just the classic larger LEGO fire piece. So yeah, a lot that I like in this head. Now the things that I don't like, number one, the jaw's a little bit awkward. Because while it looks good like this, you can actually bend it, but it doesn't look good when it's bent. Then you create a pretty noticeable gap right here, but honestly it's not the end of the world. That just looks way better. You just want to make sure the fire's pointing out, because when it's down, it's a little bit weird. The biggest thing, though, is I'm just not a fan of this hole in the front of Charizard's head. With LEGO's current building system, I don't think there's anything that could fit in there and really fix that. But this sort of ties back into my criticism that I had with Venusaur. If this was a smaller model, you would have a piece that fits this shape. Because it's so big, though, you have to use multiple pieces to accomplish this, and it leaves weird gappy parts like that. In the grand scheme of things with this set, definitely not a huge deal, but yeah, certainly something worth pointing out. Here's the back of Charizard's neck, I don't think I showed that yet, and then we can come all the way down into the tail. And the tail does a lot of things we've seen other LEGO Dragon Tails do in the past. It connects to the main body on a full-size ball joint, so you can move it up and down like this, And then there's a series of double mini ball joints to keep it sturdy, but also allow it to pose and swing back and forth. The ball joints are another piece where LEGO refuses to recolor it, and I know it's something about like the integrity of the plastic, but it's been over a decade since we got this piece. It's time, LEGO, you need to figure it out. Because again, this looks okay, it's not the end of the world that those aren't orange, but would it look better if they were orange and yellow? Yes, absolutely. And for a set this expensive, you're the biggest toy company in the world, I'm sure you could figure out a way to make a ball joint orange. It's time to figure it out, seriously. But no, the actual build around the ball joints I think looks really good, again, very smooth and cartoony. And then we come to the very end of the tail, which is of course topped off with a bit of fire. And this is probably my other big criticism of this build aside from the hole in the head. I think it looks okay, but I don't like the combination of the brick-built fire and the molded fire. I think doing a fully molded piece would have looked fine, I think doing fully brick-built would have looked fine, but in my opinion it feels like too harsh of a transition between the brick-built parts and the molded parts. It doesn't look like one full flame to me. Luckily, that probably wouldn't be too difficult to modify if you wanted to just like brick-build it further, but this one's not a huge deal, that's more of a personal taste thing for me. Charizard's display stand is this lava mountain, which looks really sick. We've got some like hardened brown rock or soil at the bottom, and the entire mountain is just covered in this reddish-orange lava. And I want to point out specifically, this is LEGO's reddish-orange color, not their typical regular orange, which makes it a little bit darker than the color they used for Charizard himself, and that's something I really appreciate. It makes the lava not look like it's made of Charizard skin. No, instead they specifically did a different color from the rest of the build. But yeah, I think the design here is great. It looks like it's flowing and pulling up at the bottom. If you wanted to pose minifigures here for some reason, there's a good bit of space. All the dark gray rocks look really nice in here as well. Of course, we've got all this ugly Technic at the bottom because that's where the other two stands are supposed to attach, so if somehow you only get the Charizard parts of the set, you might want to modify this, because yeah, it doesn't look great without the other two attached to it. But the actual mountain here is phenomenal. I really, really like this. And honestly, not too bad looking from the back either. Not the prettiest thing in the world, but honestly, I don't mind it. Also, I'm noticing we have a bunch of open technicals back here. I wonder if we're going to get an expansion to the set next year with like the Johto starters or something, so you can have the two back-to-back and then attach them in these technicals. I don't know if I need another Pokemon set this big, but that would be kind of cool. At the top of the mountain, though, you can see where the lava comes from, and then we have this black display stand. And that's how you attach Charizard, like I showed earlier. He's got a hole underneath, so he slides in pretty nicely. And the build is plenty sturdy enough to support his weight, so you can have him just flying overhead. Finally, we come to Blastoise, who in my opinion is easily the best of these three builds. Honestly, I'd say he's pretty close to perfect. There's very little I have to critique about this one. To start off, I want to point out the shade of blue that he uses. It's a small thing, but this is Dark Azure, which is the color that like Nia from Ninjago uses, and it's a color that I don't really see in abundance in LEGO sets too much. LEGO's got a lot of different blues, and I think they tend to go for some of their others. So seeing them choose this shade for Blastoise instead of one of their like more regular blues, I think is really cool, and really helps this guy stand out. Starting at the feet, I mean, he's got these stubby little turtle feet. I like the way the three toes come out the bottom, though. That's really cute. And the colors are pretty consistent here. There is, like, a little bit of black at the top, which is a bit awkward, but honestly, you could see that as sort of like shadow as his legs go into his shell. So I think it kind of works. Posability on these legs exists, but it's very limited. This is all you can do. It's literally just this. Which may be disappointing to some people, but honestly, Blastoise is a turtle. I don't expect much more than this. The fact that we have any posability at all, I'm pretty happy with. The shaping on the front of the shell is amazing. Maybe turtles are just easier to build than dragons or frogs, but it honestly feels like the gaps between the bricks are very intentional parts of the design and not just like a limit of the medium. And the tan goes so well with the blue and the white and everything. The tan parts end very nicely too around the sides where the white parts begin. And that doesn't really create any weird gaps or anything. Like, no, that all makes sense. The shell at the back's really good too. They use lots of these like LEGO Dreams tube pieces in white to create like the outline of it. But we have 7 different segments here that all fit together almost like a puzzle. There is definitely gaps in here which if you look close you can see. But compared to like Venusaur, this does not bother me nearly as much. Number one, it's a turtle shell and not a creature's face, so gaps being in it is not nearly as bothersome. And number two, even though I'm in my bright light box, it's so dark inside the shell that honestly, it doesn't feel distracting. This still feels like one solid build on its own. The underside of Blastoise is also correctly colored too. We even have a little bit of shaping on the underside here. He's got a little tail that comes out the bottom as well, which could be posed a little bit. And of course on his shell, above the shoulders, we have the cannons that are on his back. These are shooting out these bursts of water, which originally come from the LEGO Dreams theme. Cool to see that reused here. This is probably meant to be hydro pump, but honestly it's a little small, so maybe it's more like a water pulse. They use the classic LEGO barrel here. And these actually connect on ball joints, so if you want to aim them a little bit, you can. There's not a ton of motion to them, but there's something. More than I expected, honestly. And finally we come to Blastoise's head, which just like the top of the legs, there's a bit of black underneath it. But that works really well to sort of be like the shadow inside of the shell, right? They're not going to build an entire body inside the shell, so creating that like artificial shadow and implying that there's more hidden inside is a really great way to do it. The sculpting on his face is phenomenal. Again, printed eyes, printed nose, just like the others have. But man, the actual face is so good. He's got these tiny little ears here, which are so well done. I love the way the mouth connects. It's slightly open, so it breaks like the LEGO grid system, but it doesn't feel like it creates a super noticeable gap or anything. His teeth are the classic LEGO teeth pieces, and he's got like a little red tongue inside his mouth. The only part of the head I don't love is there's a little bit of a gap right here where you can see this gray stud. That would have been nice if it was blue instead, but honestly, compared to the other two's faces, this is much better. Especially because you can only see that one from a certain angle. If you're looking at this guy like this, yeah, that's not an issue at all. Oh, and I actually didn't talk about the arms yet. The upper arm that comes out of the body does not have any motion on it, it's just sort of locked in place. But it is very round and covered up on all sides. That connects on too many ball joints and can be moved a little bit. Again, just like with Charizard, it is time to recolor these pieces. The gray is definitely probably one of the worst looking parts of this build, just because it is out of place here. But I like that they gave us some movement there. And then he's got 3 little claws in each hand. Overall, I am very happy with Blastoise. I think he especially looks phenomenal. If all 3 Pokemon were at this level, I'd be incredibly happy with this set. Sure, there's a few things that maybe could be improved a little bit, but nothing honestly too bad. This guy is really good. Finally, we come to Blastoise's base, which is probably the best of the 3 bases as well. It's this little beach with a rock formation and this wave crashing against the rock. This thing is just so pretty, especially the wave. I love the way that was done. There's like this series of cascading windshield pieces, but on the sides the wave is also like climbing up the rock. We got multiple different shades of blue as well as transparent light blue. This looks so good, and also it's somewhat reminiscent of the surf animation in like the Generation 3 and onward Pokemon games, which I don't know if that was intentional or not, but considering all the Pokemon are using some sort of move, even though Blastoise already has like the Hydro Pump coming out of his cannons, I don't know, I kind of like this as a representation of him using Surf, because I think in most in-game playthroughs, Surf is a move you're probably going to have in your Blastoise anyway. I don't know how I feel about like the flat dark blue for the main part of the ocean. Maybe regular blue would have looked better, but it does create some nice contrast like with where the wave begins, and at least there is that transparent light blue on top. There's a bit of a sandy shore over here, and this also sort of meshes with the Venusaur's habitat, because he's got a bit of this color on his side as well. And then we have this rocky cliffside you can climb up, with a little bit of space over here where a figure can be posed. However, there's also 2 Technic axles for Blastoise to stand on. It's just like Venusaur, he has holes in his feet. So there's how he looks alone on his stand, and I mean, yeah, this is great. An awesome way to display him. Here's how the stands look without the Pokemon all combined back together as one. There's a quick overview from above as well. And this is where we get into sort of my conclusion to this video. Because listen, these stands look great. I think this is an awesome way to display the Pokemon, and it really enhances the look of the set. But the thing is, I don't know if we needed these, because while it looks great, look how big this is. Putting this set together, this was probably a third of the set was just putting together these stands. And while I do love how they look, I don't know, I probably would have preferred if this set was $200 cheaper and didn't include any of this, and it was just the 3 Pokemon. And if there wasn't the stands, then all 3 Pokemon would have no reason to be in the same set. Instead, they could be 3 individual sets. Charge like $150 each for each of the Pokemon individually without the stands. And then suddenly this entire thing is a lot more accessible. People don't have to drop $650 to get this entire set. No, instead they can pick their favorite Pokemon, just get that, and then the really hardcore fans can go and buy everything. But I think that's the thing. They want you to buy the big set, so that's why this is here. And I think that's where we get into my conclusion of this video. Because what are my overall thoughts on this set? Well, I really want to hone in on the price here, because this price is so weird to talk about. $650 is ridiculous. I don't think any LEGO set should cost $650. That being said, do you get $650 worth of LEGO here? Honestly, I would say yes. You have nearly 7,000 pieces, there's a lot of huge pieces, and this is a massive display piece on a shelf. I do think this set is a $650 value. But yeah, like I said, I just don't think it needs to be. The stands are awesome, but they take up so much of the set. I wish the set was released without it so it became more accessible. And again, in terms of sheer quantity and like brick count, yeah, this is $650. But in terms of the actual builds, there was a few compromises made that I'm not the biggest fan of. Blastoise is pretty much perfect. Sure, there's some small things, but honestly, I'm really happy with that build. Charizard is really close to perfect. I think the hole in his head's a little bit disappointing. And then Venusaur is solid. I definitely have a lot of critiques of the build, but I still really like it. But yeah, like I mentioned all throughout this video, I honestly think Charizard and Venusaur could be better if they were smaller. But because of the scale they were building at, it just made things too difficult. And that's another thing where if this was a cheaper set, that may not have been much of an issue. So would I recommend that you guys pick this set up? Honestly, probably not. Listen, I'm a huge Pokemon fan, I'm incredibly grateful to LEGO for sending this to me, and I'm so happy to have this in my collection. But man, $650 is a lot of money. If that's the kind of budget you're working with, if you could drop that much money and you love Pokemon that much, then sure, go ahead and do it. You do get that much value in this set. But if you're thinking you kinda want it, but you're struggling to afford it, I would say honestly wait. LEGO Pokemon I'm sure is going to be a big deal and we're going to have more and more sets down the line. Wait for something a little bit smaller, a little bit more accessible, because I do think there's going to end up being better offerings for you out there than this one. Even from this wave, I recommend the Eevee set. I think that one's phenomenal. This one, while there's a lot that I love, that price is just too hard of a pill to swallow. But of course, those are just my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think of this set in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like on it, subscribe to my channel if you're new, and let me know in the comments which LEGO Pokemon set you want to see an early review of next. But as for this one, I think that's about all I have to say, so thanks for watching everybody, I hope you all enjoyed. Make sure to use code BRICKSBYMIND in the Fortnite item shop, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye!